Hello, survivors. Thanks for joining us today. Before we begin, if you enjoy our stories, please subscribe to the channel. It really means a lot. Also, tell us in the comments which city you're listening from. It's great to see how far our community reaches. Now, let's start the story. The smell of popcorn and disinfectant, that's what I remember most clearly about the last normal hour. We were at the Maple Creek Mall, me, Mom, Dad, and my little sister, Maya. It was a Saturday, early October, one of those perfect autumn days where the air is crisp and the sun makes everything look gold. Dad needed new running shoes. Maya wanted to spend her allowance at the toy store, and I was just tagging along, mostly scrolling through memes on my phone, half listening to Mom remind me about my overdue history paper. I was 16. Life was boringly predictable, and the biggest drama was trying to convince my parents to let me go to Sarah W.'s party next weekend. Then the screaming started. It wasn't like movie screams, high-pitched and dramatic. It was ragged, guttural, full of real terror. It came from the food court echoing through the cavernous mall space. People stopped, heads turned. A ripple of unease went through the crowd in the shoe store. Dad frowned, looking towards the entrance. What was that? More screams followed, closer this time, mixed with the sound of shattering glass and something heavy falling. People started moving, a nervous shuffle at first, then faster, pushing towards the exits. Confusion morphed into panic in seconds. "Leo, Maya, stay close!" Mom grabbed Maya's hand, her knuckles white. Dad put a protective arm around my shoulder, trying to steer us through the sudden surge of bodies. We were near the main entrance when we saw the first one. A man, maybe in his 30s, wearing a security guard uniform, stumbled through the automatic doors, but he wasn't stumbling like he was drunk or hurt. His movements were jerky, wrong, like a badly handled marionette. His head lolled at an impossible angle, and his eyes, they were milky white, vacant, yet somehow filled with a terrifying, predatory focus. Dark, thick fluid, not quite blood, something darker, oilier, stained the front of his uniform and dripped from his mouth. He saw the crowd and let out this horrible, wet gurgling sound before lunging at the nearest person, an elderly woman clutching her purse. He didn't grab her, he bit her, sinking his teeth into her neck with savage force. Her scream was drowned out by the collective gasp, and then the explosion of pure, unadulterated panic from everyone else. "Go! Go to the car!" Dad roared, shoving me forward. The crowd became a stampede. People pushed, shoved, fell. I held onto Maya's backpack strap with one hand, Mom holding her other, Dad trying to clear a path ahead. We burst out into the parking lot, the bright sunlight momentarily blinding after the mall's artificial lighting. Chaos reigned. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. People were running everywhere, car alarms blared, horns honked incessantly. Another infected security guard tackled a man near a minivan, biting and tearing. "This way." Dad pulled towards our silver SUV, parked further out near the edge of the lot. We were almost there, maybe 50 feet away, when it happened. A car, a red sedan, came careening backward out of a parking spot. Driver slumped over the wheel, clearly dead or unconscious. It slammed directly into a group of people running beside us. The impact threw bodies like rag dolls. One of them, a large man in a flannel shirt, flew through the air and landed heavily against Mom. She screamed, falling sideways. Maya shrieked, pulled down with her. Dad spun around, trying to help them up, but the red sedan kept moving, bouncing off another parked car before lurching to a stop. More importantly, the noise, the sudden movement, had drawn them. 3 infected, their faces smeared with that dark fluid, changed direction, sprinting towards us with that terrifying, unnatural speed. "Leo, get Maya in the car. Now!" Dad yelled, pulling Mom to her feet. She was clutching her arm, sobbing, but seemed okay otherwise. He pushed them both towards the SUV. I grabbed Maya, who was frozen, eyes wide with terror, and half-dragged her the last few yards. "Unlock it," I yelled at Dad, fumbling with Maya's small hand. He hit the button on his keychain just as the first infected reached him. It lunged, jaw snapping. Dad reacted instantly, years of coaching my little league team somehow translating into a surprisingly effective shove that sent the creature stumbling back. "Get in," he screamed, turning to face the other two, using himself as a shield. I shoved Maya into the back seat, scrambling in after her, pulling the heavy door shut just as Mom got the passenger door open and tumbled inside. I looked back, through the rear window, my heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. Dad was grappling with one infected, trying to keep its snapping teeth away from his face, while the other circled around him. The first one he'd pushed down was already getting back up, its head twisted at a horrifying angle. "Dad!" I screamed, banging on the window. "Drive!" Mom shrieked at me, her voice raw with terror. "Leo, lock the doors! Lock them!" I fumbled, with the lock button on the driver's side panel, my fingers clumsy with panic. Through the windshield I saw Dad kick out, connecting with the circling infected's knee. It buckled, but didn't fall. He spun, throwing the one he was grappling with into the third creature. It bought him a second, maybe two. He turned, sprinting for the driver's door, yanking it open. And then the security guard from the mall, the first one we'd seen, tackled him from the side. They went down together behind the open door, out of my line of sight. I heard Dad shout, a sharp cry of pain or rage, cut off abruptly. "No!" Mom screamed, trying to open her door, but I'd locked it. "Mike! Mike!" More infected were converging. On the SUV now, drawn by the commotion. They slammed against the windows, pale faces distorted, mouths opening and closing, smearing dark fluid across the glass. Maya was screaming hysterically in the back seat. "We have to go. Mom, we have to go!" I yelled, shaking her shoulder. She was unresponsive, staring blankly at the driver's side door, tears streaming down her face. An infected slammed its fist against the windshield, cracking the glass. Another clawed at the passenger window where Mom sat frozen. The rhythmic thudding against the metal was terrifying. They were going to break through. My hand moved almost of its own accord, finding the gear shift. Dad had been teaching me to drive, letting me practice in empty parking lots. I knew the basics. My foot found the accelerator. The engine roared. "Leo." "No, your father!" Mom finally shrieked, grabbing my arm. "He's gone, Mom. They got him. We have to go." The words tore out of me, raw and ugly. I stomped on the gas. The SUV lurched forward, bouncing off the infected surrounding us. Bodies thumped against the sides. One rolled over the hood, its face hideously close to the cracked windshield for a horrifying second before sliding off. I didn't look back. I couldn't. I steered blindly through the chaotic parking lot, swerving around abandoned cars and running figures, both living and undead. Maya's screams turned into choked sobs in the back. Mom was muttering Dad's name over and over, rocking back and forth. We hit the main road, joining a stream of fleeing vehicles, but it was gridlocked almost immediately. Cars honked, people shouted. Up ahead I could see more infected weaving through the stopped traffic, pulling people from their cars. "Where do we go?" Mom whispered, her voice hollow. I didn't know. Home? Our house was miles away, back through the town that was clearly falling apart. Grandma's. She lived on the other side of the state. The family emergency plan, meet at the public library downtown, seemed suicidal now. Think. Dad always said, "Panic is useless. Think." My phone. I fumbled it out of my pocket. No signal, of course, the radio only yielded static. Then I saw it, a side street, relatively clear. Maybe it led out of town, bypassed the main routes. Without a word, I wrenched the steering wheel, bumping over the curb and onto the quieter street. We drove for maybe 5 minutes, the sounds of chaos fading slightly behind us, replaced by an eerie quiet. We passed neat suburban houses, lawns perfectly manicured, Halloween decorations already starting to appear on some porches. It looked so normal, except for the complete lack of people. "Leo, where are we going?" Mom asked again, her voice a little steadier. I don't know, I admitted. Away from that. We rounded a corner and my breath caught. Our street. Just 2 blocks down, I could see our mailbox, the big oak tree in the front yard. We were almost home. Maybe we could barricade ourselves in, wait it out. We had supplies. Dad had been a low-key prepper, always joking about needing a zombie plan. But as we got closer, the hope died. Our neighbor, Mr. Henderson, was staggering in his front yard, his face pale and contorted, dark fluid staining his favorite gardening overalls. He turned as our SUV approached, his vacant eyes fixing on us. And then the front door of our house swung open. It wasn't Dad. It was something wearing our mailman's uniform, its movements jerky, its jaw hanging slack. It lurched onto the porch, followed by another figure, Mrs. Gable from next door. Her floral dress torn, one arm bent at a horrifying angle. They were already there. They were at our house. "No," Mom whispered, understanding dawning in her eyes. "Oh God, no." Mr. Henderson started shambling towards us. The things on our porch turned, drawn by the engine noise. There was nowhere to go. Home wasn't safe. It was compromised. Another decision. Stay and fight? Impossible. Flee? Where? Suddenly Maya screamed from the back seat. "Mommy, look!" I glanced in the rearview mirror. An SUV, identical to ours, silver, same make, same model, was stopped at the intersection. Behind us. And standing beside it, waving frantically, were 2 figures, one tall, male, one smaller, female, holding the hand of a little girl with bright red pigtails. It was impossible. It couldn't be. But the shape, the posture, it looked exactly like Dad. And the little girl, she looked just like Maya. And the woman beside, them. "Mike?" Mom whispered, pressing her face against the side window. "Maya." The figures waved again, more urgently, pointing down the street away from our house towards the highway bypass. What was happening? Was I hallucinating? Was Mom? Were we seeing ghosts? Or something else? The figures looked solid, real. The Dad figure mouthed something I couldn't make out, then pointed emphatically down the road again. The infected Mr. Henderson was getting closer. The things from our porch were shambling faster now. "What do we do?" Mom asked, her voice trembling, torn between the impossible sight behind us and the undeniable horror ahead. I looked at the figures in the mirror again. They looked desperate, pleading. They looked like my family. Then I looked ahead at our house now occupied by monsters. There was no going back there. Maybe they were trying to lead us somewhere safe. Maybe this was some kind of miracle, some impossible chance. "We follow them," I said, surprising myself with the sudden certainty. I put the car in drive, turning away from our street, heading towards the highway bypass, glancing in the rear view mirror. The other SUV pulled out, following us, keeping a steady distance. As we drove away, leaving our overrun home behind, Maya spoke from the back seat, her voice small and confused. "Leo, why did Daddy and me wave from that other car?" I didn't have an answer. I just kept driving, following the impossible reflection of my family, my stomach twisting with a new kind of fear, wondering if we were driving towards safety or deeper into the nightmare. The bypass was less chaotic than the main roads, but not deserted. Abandoned cars dotted the shoulder. Some crashed, some just stopped, doors ajar. We passed a state trooper's cruiser, empty, lights still flashing. In the distance, smoke plumed from several locations back towards Maple Creek. The other SUV stayed. Behind us, a constant presence in my mirrors. Every time I checked, the figures inside seemed solid, real. The Dad figure occasionally gestured, pointing out potential hazards or indicating turns, guiding us. "Who are they, Leo?" Mom asked again. Her voice hushed, afraid to break whatever fragile reality this was. "I don't know," I whispered back. "But they look like—" "I know what they look like," she interrupted, her gaze fixed on the mirror. "But it's impossible. Mike is—" Her voice broke. Maya was quiet in the back, watching the other car intently. "Daddy looks sad," she murmured. after a while. We followed them for maybe 20 minutes, navigating around wrecked vehicles and the occasional shambling figure. The infected on the bypass seemed slower, more confused than the ones in town, perhaps disoriented by the open space or the lack of concentrated noise. The dad figure in the car behind us seemed to anticipate their movements, guiding me around, clusters before I even saw them clearly. It was uncanny. Then they led us off the bypass onto a narrower county road winding through farmland. Cornfields stretched on either side, the stalks rustling in the breeze. It felt safer here, more isolated. The other SUV slowed, pulling up alongside us for a moment. Through the window, I could see the dad figure clearly now. It was Dad's face, his clothes, but his eyes held an infinite sadness, a profound weariness I'd never seen before. The Maya figure beside him looked pale, ethereal. The mom figure driving wasn't visible. He pointed ahead towards a cluster of buildings barely visible in the distance, a farm, silos, a large red barn, then mouthed a single word, safe. Before I could react or question, their SUV accelerated, speeding ahead, leaving us behind. "Wait," Mom called out, reaching as if she could somehow stop them. "Where are you going?" But they didn't slow down. They disappeared around a bend, and we were alone again. "Why did they leave?" Maya asked, her voice small. "They showed us where to go," I said, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. "That farm up ahead. They think it's safe." We drove towards the farm cautiously. It looked peaceful, untouched by the chaos. No broken windows, no shambling figures in the yard. Just a typical Midwestern farmstead basking in the late afternoon sun. We pulled into the long gravel driveway, stopping near the main house. The place was quiet, almost too quiet. "Hello?" Mom called out tentatively as we got out of the SUV. "Is anyone here?" No answer. The front porch swing moved slightly in the breeze. A dog barked somewhere in the distance, a normal sound that felt jarringly out of place. "Stay here," I told Mom and Maya, grabbing a tire iron from the back of the SUV. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. "Lock the doors. Honk if you see anything." I circled the house first. Everything looked secure, windows intact, back door locked. I peered through a living room window, furniture covered in white sheets, suggesting the owners were away. Next, I checked the barn. The large sliding doors were slightly ajar. I pushed one open slowly, the rusty hinges groaning. Inside, shadows danced in the dusty shafts of light filtering through gaps in the roof. The smell of hay and old manure filled the air. Empty stalls lined one wall. A tractor sat parked in the center. Tools hung neatly on the walls. Nothing seemed out of place. Then I saw the cellar door set into the barn's dirt floor, secured with a heavy padlock. Curiosity, or maybe just a prepper instinct inherited from Dad, made me check it. The padlock wasn't locked, it hung open on the hasp. I hesitated. Exploring dark cellars felt like something straight out of a horror movie cliché. But what if there were supplies down there? Or worse, what if something else was? I pulled the heavy wooden doors open, revealing steep, narrow stairs leading down into darkness. A damp, earthy smell wafted up. "Hello?" I called down, my voice echoing unnaturally. No answer. I clicked on my phone's flashlight, the beam cutting through the oppressive blackness. The cellar was small, stone-lined, filled with dusty jars of preserves, old farming equipment, and cobwebs. Nothing threatening. Relieved, I was about to close the doors when my light caught something in the far corner. A shape huddled against the wall, knees pulled to its chest. I moved closer, my heart starting to pound again. It was a person. A girl, maybe my age, with tangled brown hair hiding her face. She flinched as my light hit her. "Hey," I said softly, keeping my distance. "It's okay, I'm not one of them." She looked up slowly. Her face was smudged with dirt, eyes wide with fear, but they were clear, human. "Are you sure?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. "Yeah, I'm sure," I said, offering a tentative smile. "My name's Leo, my mom and sister are outside. We saw this place, thought it might be safe. Chloe, she replied, pushing her hair back. I was hiding. They came through earlier. The infected? She nodded, swallowing hard. My parents and we were driving through trying to get to my aunt's in Indiana. Our car broke down just past the bypass. We saw the farm, thought we could get help. They were waiting. She gestured vaguely towards the fields. Came out of the corn, my parents, they told me to run, hide in the barn. Tears welled in her eyes. I heard them screaming. Another survivor, another person separated from their family on the first day. I'm sorry, I said, the words feeling inadequate. My dad. We got separated back at the mall. A shared look passed between us, an instant understanding of the specific horror we were both living. We need to get you out of here, I said. We're going to stay here for a bit, figure out our next move. You can come with us. She hesitated, glancing nervously at the cellar entrance. Is it really safe out there? Safer than down here alone, I replied. Come on. I helped her up the stairs, blinking as we emerged into the brighter light of the barn. Together we walked back towards the house where Mom and Maya were waiting anxiously by the SUV. Seeing Chloe, another young person, seemed to reassure Mom slightly. We introduced ourselves, the shared trauma creating an instant fragile bond. While Mom tended to Chloe, giving her water and some granola bars from our emergency kit, I took another look around, this time with a growing sense of unease. The farm felt too perfect, too untouched. Where were the owners? Why was the padlock on the cellar open? And why had the figures in the other SUV led us specifically here? My eyes fell on the house again. White sheets covering furniture. That usually meant someone was gone for an extended trip, or something else. I walked back to the front porch, peering through the living room window again. This time, I noticed something I'd missed before. On a small table near the window, half hidden by a sheet, was a framed photograph. I angled my phone's flashlight to get a better look. It was a family photo, a smiling couple, maybe in their late 50s, standing proudly between two teenage boys. They looked happy, normal, except the man, his face. It was the same face I'd seen behind the wheel of the other SUV, the dad figure who had led us here, and the woman beside him. She was the mom figure I hadn't been able to see clearly. This was their farm. My blood ran cold. The figures who led us here weren't random apparitions. They were connected to this place. They were the owners, or ghosts of them. And they had led us, specifically, to their empty home. Why? Leo, Mom called from the SUV. Everything okay? Yeah, I lied, my mind racing, just checking things out. Safe, the dad figure had mouthed the word safe. But safe from what? And for whom? This place didn't feel safe anymore. It felt like a trap, carefully set, and we had walked right into it. I looked towards the setting sun, the shadows lengthening across the yard. We needed to leave. But the memory of the dad figure's sad eyes, the way he'd pointed us here, it felt less like a lure and more like a desperate plea. Safe for us, perhaps? But why? What was here that we needed protection from? Or what was coming that this farm offered refuge against? The quiet was the most unnerving part. After the constant chaos of the mall and the highway, the silence of the farm felt heavy, unnatural. Even the distant dog had stopped barking. Maya was subdued, drawing circles in, the dust on the SUV's dashboard. Mom kept glancing nervously towards the fields while Chloe huddled near the barn, clearly reluctant to get too close to the house where she'd heard her parents die. We can't stay here, I said finally, walking back to the group. Something's not right. Where do we go? Mom asked, voicing the question that hung over us. The roads aren't safe, the cities are falling. The radio mentioned a FEMA depot, I recalled. Northwest of Jeff City. It's a long shot, but it's better than waiting here for whatever. We don't have much fuel, Mom pointed out, checking the gauge. Maybe half a tank. There might be fuel in the barn, Chloe spoke up, her voice still shaky. For the tractor, maybe diesel. It was worth checking. While Mom stayed with Maya near the SUV, Chloe and I ventured back into the barn's dusty interior. We found several large red containers near the tractor. Diesel. Not ideal for the SUV, but maybe mixable in a pinch, or usable if we found another vehicle. More importantly, stored next to the fuel were farming supplies, sturdy shovels, pitchforks, an axe, basic but potentially life-saving weapons. As Chloe pointed out the fuel shutoff valve for the main tank, my flashlight beam caught something else tucked away in a corner workbench drawer. A local road map, heavily marked. Circles around certain towns, routes highlighted in yellow, others crossed out in red, and notes scribbled in the margins. Avoid Whys after dark. Bridge out at Miller's Crossing. Cops gone from Asheville. Safe. House? Whitaker Farm. Whitaker Farm. That was this place. Someone had been planning, scouting routes, just like a prepper, but the dates on the map were recent, within the last month. Who lived here? I asked Chloe, showing her the map. The Whitakers, I think, she said. My dad mentioned the name when we saw the mailbox. She traced one of the marked routes with a finger. This looks like the way we were trying to go. So the Whitakers knew something was coming, or at least suspected it. They'd been preparing, planning escape routes, and this farm, their home, was marked as a potential safe house, but they hadn't escaped. They'd turned. The dad figure I saw. Was he a ghost? An echo trying to guide others to the safety he couldn't reach himself? The thought was both comforting and terrifying. Look at this, Chloe said, pointing to a different section of the map. A large area encompassing Maple Creek, our hometown, was circled in thick black marker with a single word written beside. It Ground Zero. Before I could process the implication, a sound drifted from outside. Faint at first, then growing louder. Music. Tinny, distorted, like an old-timey ice cream truck jingle. It was coming from the direction of the cornfields. What? Is that? Chloe whispered, eyes wide. We moved cautiously to the barn door, peering out. The sun had dipped below the horizon now, painting the sky in shades of purple and blood orange. The eerie jingle grew louder, closer. And then we saw them. Figures emerging from the corn. Dozens of them, shambling towards the farm. But these weren't like the others we'd seen. They moved slower, more deliberately, and they weren't silent. They were humming, a low, discordant chorus that blended horribly with the ice cream truck music. And the source of the music wasn't an ice cream truck. It was a figure in the center of the shambling group, taller than the rest, wearing what looked like a tattered clown costume, complete with peeling face paint that revealed gray, decaying skin beneath. It held aloft an old music box, cranking the handle slowly. The cheerful tune warped into something nightmarish. Oh God, Chloe breathed, backing away from the door. It's him, the clown from the festival. What festival? Maple Creek Fall Festival, she explained, her voice trembling. Last weekend, there was this creepy clown handing out balloons. Kids were saying he tried to bite them. Everyone thought it was just a bad joke, part of an act. These weren't random infected stumbling onto the farm. They were being led, organized somehow, and they were heading straight for us. Mom, Maya, get in the barn, now, I yelled, running towards the SUV. The cheerful, discordant music filled the air as the horde advanced. The clown figure stopped at the edge of the cornfield, raising the music box higher. The shambling figures around it paused, turning their vacant eyes towards the barn, towards us. The humming intensified, a low thrumming sound that vibrated in my chest. We scrambled into the barn, sliding the heavy doors shut just as the first figures reached the edge of the yard. I helped Mom wedge the tire iron against the doors, reinforcing them as best we could. We huddled together in the dusty darkness, listening to the approaching shuffle of feet and the relentless, maddening jingle of the music box. What do they want? Maya whimpered, burying her face in Mom's side. Us, Chloe whispered, clutching the pitchfork we'd found. The shuffling stopped just outside the barn doors. The music box jingle continued, closer now, right outside. Silence, except for the cheerful, terrifying tune. Then a soft tapping began on the wooden doors. Tap, tap, tap. Not frantic or aggressive, but rhythmic, almost patient. "Don't make a sound," I whispered, my hand tight on the axe handle. We pressed ourselves against the back wall, near the silent tractor hidden in the deepest shadows. The tapping continued, a slow, deliberate counterpoint to the music box melody. It felt like a game, a cat-and-mouse pursuit where we were definitely the mice. Minutes stretched into an eternity. The tapping moved along the door, testing it, then it stopped. The music box jingle faded slightly, as if the clown figure was moving away. We held our breath, straining to hear. Silence. Had they given up? Moved on? Suddenly, a deafening crash came from the other side of the barn. Wood splintered. They hadn't tried the main doors. They were breaking through the weaker back wall near the empty stalls. "The loft," I hissed, pointing towards a rickety wooden ladder leading up to the hayloft. "Quick!" We scrambled up the ladder, Maya clinging to Mom's back, Chloe right. Behind me, pitchfork held ready. We reached the loft just as the first infected hand punched through the rotting planks of the back wall, followed by a gray, slack-jawed face. More hands, more faces appeared, tearing at the wood. The loft offered minimal cover, just piles of old hay and darkness. We flattened ourselves against the floor, peering through gaps in the floorboards. Below, the infected poured into the barn led by the clown figure, who scanned the space with those terrifyingly vacant eyes, the music box still playing its relentless tune. They shambled around, sniffing the air, bumping into stalls, their low humming filling the space. They knew we were here. They were searching. One of them, a woman in a tattered dress, stopped directly below us, her head tilted back, milky eyes seeming to stare right through the floorboards into mine. She let out a low moan, pointing a skeletal finger upwards. The sigh clown turned, its painted grin seeming to widen impossibly. It raised the music box again and the jingle sped up, becoming frantic, discordant. The humming from the others rose in pitch, turning into agitated growls. They started converging beneath the loft, clawing at the support beams, shaking the entire structure. "We're trapped," Mom whispered, pulling Maya closer. I looked around desperately. There had to be another way out. My eyes landed on the hayloft. Doors at the far end, the ones used for loading hay, overlooking the fields behind the barn. They were old, probably bolted from the outside. But maybe... Keeping low, I crawled towards the doors, axe in hand. The wood was thick, weathered. I examined the edges. No obvious external bolt, just heavy internal latches. But they were rusted shut. Below, the infected were becoming more frantic, throwing themselves against the support posts. The floorboards groaned under the strain. "Chloe, the pitchfork," I called back softly. "Help me pry this." Together, we jammed the tines of the pitchfork into the seam between the heavy doors, putting all our weight into it. Metal screeched against rusted metal. Wood splintered. Below, the clown shrieked, an awful, inhuman sound, urging the others on. One of the main support beams cracked loudly. "It's working," Chloe grunted, straining. "Almost." With a final wrenching groan, the latch gave way. The right side door swung inward slightly. I peered out. Below was a drop of about 15 feet onto packed earth. Too high to jump safely, especially with Mom and Maya. But directly below the doors was an old, rusty manure spreader, filled with what looked like soft, decaying hay and worse. Not ideal, but better than facing the horde. "The spreader," I yelled. "We jump for it. Mom, you and Maya go first." Mom hesitated, looking down at the foul-smelling cart, then back at the infected now trying to climb the loft ladder. She nodded grimly. "Okay, Maya, hold on tight." As Mom positioned herself and Maya at the edge, Chloe and I tried to hold the infected back from the ladder, swinging the pitchfork and axe. An infected hand grabbed the axe handle, yanking it from my grasp. It clattered to the barn floor below. I shoved Chloe back towards the opening. "Go! Get out!" Mom jumped, landing with a soft thud in the spreader. Chloe followed immediately. I looked back. The clown was halfway up the ladder. its painted face inches away, that awful music box still playing. I kicked out, catching it square in the chest, sending it tumbling back onto the others below. Then I turned and leaped, launching myself out, into the night air, praying the rusty cart would hold. I landed hard, the impact knocking the wind out of me, the stench of decay overwhelming. Mom was already helping Chloe and Maya out of the spreader. "Run!" I gasped, scrambling to my feet. Towards the fields. We sprinted away from the barn just as the infected poured out of the now open hayloft doors, dropping awkwardly to the ground before giving chase. We plunged into the dense cornfield, the tall stalks whipping against our faces, hiding us momentarily from view. The eerie music box jingle pursued us closer than I liked. We ran blindly through the rows, tripping over uneven ground, lungs burning. The corn seemed endless, a suffocating green maze. Behind us we could hear the rustling sounds of the infected pushing through the stalks, their low moans and the clown's horrible music getting louder. They were faster in the open field than I'd expected. "This way," Chloe pointed towards a dark shape looming ahead. A silo standing alone at the edge of the field. Maybe we could climb it, find temporary safety. We reached the silo's base, gasping for breath. A metal ladder ran up its side, disappearing into the darkness above. "Mom, Chloe, get Maya up first," I urged, turning to face the rustling corn. The first infected burst through the stalks just yards away, followed by the clown, its painted grin wider than ever. "I'll hold them off," I yelled, grabbing the pitchfork from Chloe. "Climb!" As they scrambled up the ladder, I faced the approaching horde. The clown stopped, letting the others surge forward. I swung the pitchfork like a desperate farmer defending his land, impaling the first creature, shoving it back into the others. But there were too many. They swarmed forward, ignoring their fallen comrade. A hand grabbed my leg, pulling me down. I kicked free, scrambling backward towards the ladder, swinging the pitchfork wildly. They were almost on me when a gunshot cracked through the night. The infected closest to me dropped, head exploding. Another shot, another infected fell. Someone was shooting from the top of the silo. "Leo, climb!" It was Mom's voice. She'd found something, a rifle maybe, left by the farmers. I didn't need telling twice. I grabbed the ladder rungs and hauled myself upward, ignoring the grasping hands. Below, more shots rang out from above, picking off the infected trying to follow me up the ladder. I reached the top platform just as the clown figure stepped out of the corn, staring up at us. Its music box finally silent. It raised a single gray finger, pointing directly at me, then slowly, deliberately, turned and shambled back into the corn, the other infected following obediently. They weren't retreating, they were disengaging as if called off. I collapsed onto the platform beside Mom, Chloe, and Maya. Mom held an old bolt-action hunting rifle, smoke curling from the barrel. "Found it leaning against the railing," she said, her voice trembling but steady. "Learned to shoot with your grandpa back on the farm." We looked down from our precarious perch. The cornfield below was still, empty except for the bodies of the infected we'd taken down. The farmhouse stood dark and silent in the distance. The night air was cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and corn silk, momentarily free of the stench of decay. "Why did they leave?" Chloe asked, voicing the question on all our minds. "That clown, it just called them off." "It marked him," Mom said quietly, looking at me, her eyes filled with a new kind of fear. "Back at the barn, it pointed right at you." I remembered the clown's final gesture, that single pointing finger. It hadn't been a threat, it had been a designation, an identification. Somehow, among the chaos, among the fleeing survivors, I had been chosen. Marked. For what, I had no idea. We stayed on top of that silo until the first hint of dawn painted the eastern sky. Sleep was impossible. Every rustle in the cornfield below, every distant moan carried on the wind, set our nerves on edge. We took turns keeping watch, though there was little to see but darkness and the occasional flicker of distant fires back towards Maple Creek. Mom, surprisingly, was the calmest, finding the rifle, defending us, Seemed to have unlocked some reserve of strength I hadn't known she possessed. Or maybe it was just maternal instinct kicking into overdrive. Chloe remained withdrawn, the trauma of losing her parents still fresh. But she watched the fields with a grim determination, pitchfork always within reach. Maya eventually cried herself to sleep, curled against Mom, clutching a small, dirty teddy bear she must have grabbed before we fled the house. As the sky lightened, revealing the dew-covered fields and the silent farmhouse, we had to face the reality of our situation. We were stranded, miles from any known safe zone with limited supplies, minimal fuel, and the knowledge that we were being hunted, or at least observed by something more organized and sinister than the shambling hordes we'd encountered earlier. "We need to get back to the SUV," I said, breaking the silence. "If it's still there." "And go where?" Mom asked. "The depot's gone. The cities are falling apart." "West," I decided. "Away from the major populations. Find an isolated place, regroup, figure out what's next. Maybe head towards the mountains." It wasn't much of a plan, but it was better than staying put. The descent from the silo was nerve-wracking, but the farm remained quiet. We approached the barn cautiously. The bodies of the infected I'd taken down lay where they'd fallen, already, attracting flies. The clown and the rest of the horde were gone, leaving no trace except for the broken back wall and the lingering faint scent of decay mixed with something sickly sweet, like rotting candy. Our SUV was still parked where we'd left it near the sea house, miraculously untouched. But as we approached, I noticed something tucked under the windshield wiper. A single wilted red balloon tied with a dirty string. A calling card. My blood ran cold. The clown knew where we were, knew the vehicle. It hadn't just disengaged last night, it had retreated strategically, leaving a marker, a promise. It was playing with us. "What is it?" Mom asked, seeing my expression. "We need to leave," I said, ripping the balloon off and crushing it under my boot. "Now, and we need to ditch this car as soon as possible." We piled into the SUV, the sense of urgency renewed. I took the wheel this time, needing the control. We backed out of the driveway, leaving the Whitaker farm behind, glancing nervously at the cornfields lining the road. Every shadow seemed to hold a threat. Every rustle of leaves sounded like approaching footsteps. We drove west for maybe an hour on deserted county roads, putting as much distance as possible between ourselves and the farm. We passed more abandoned vehicles, occasional bodies, but saw no living people and thankfully no more infected. The scale of the collapse was becoming terrifyingly clear. This wasn't localized. It was everywhere. "We need fuel," Mom said, pointing at the gauge which hovered near empty. "And supplies. We only have a few granola bars left." Just ahead, we spotted a sign for a small town, Harmony Creek, population 612. Another tiny dot on the map, potentially untouched, potentially overrun. "We'll check it out," I said. "Quick look for gas and food, then we keep moving." Harmony. Creek looked like a ghost town. Shops shuttered, houses dark, not a soul in sight. An eerie silence hung over the place. We found a small gas station on the edge of town, pumps blessedly old-fashioned, likely still working without main power. While Mom and Chloe kept watch, weapons ready, I managed to siphon about 10 gallons from the underground tank into our SUV using a hose I found in the back. Another useful skill learned from Dad's prepping lectures. Enough to keep us moving, for a while. Next, the grocery store. The glass front doors were intact but unlocked. Inside, the aisles were dimly lit by emergency backup lights. Shelves were partially looted, but there was still food, canned goods, crackers, bottled water. We grabbed backpacks and filled them quickly, focusing on non-perishables. Maya, clinging to Mom's hand, spotted a box of animal crackers, and her face lit up with the first genuine smile I'd seen since yesterday. A small moment of normalcy in the nightmare. We were heading for the checkout, our bags full, when we heard it. A low moan from the back of the store, near the butcher counter. We froze. Another moan, closer this time, accompanied by a shuffling sound. "Back door," I whispered, pointing towards the employee-only exit. We moved silently down the aisle, past overturned shopping carts and spilled produce. The moaning grew louder. We reached the back room. Storage shelves, a time clock, lockers. The exit door was right there, leading to an alley. Suddenly, the door to the walk-in freezer burst open, and an infected figure stumbled out. The store butcher, still wearing his blood-stained apron, a meat cleaver clutched in one gray hand. He saw us, let out a wet snarl, and charged. There was no room to maneuver. Mom shoved Maya behind her. Chloe raised the pitchfork defensively. I dropped my backpack and met the charge head-on, using the tire iron. The cleaver swung wildly, glancing off the metal bar with a clang. I rammed the pointed end of the tire iron into the butcher's chest. It slowed him, but didn't stop him. He grabbed the iron, pulling me closer, his foul breath hot on my face, snapping teeth inches away. "Leo!" Mom screamed. Chloe lunged, jabbing the pitchfork into the butcher's side. He roared, momentarily distracted, loosening his grip on the tire iron just enough for me to wrench it free. I swung it hard, connecting solidly with the side of his head. He staggered back, then collapsed. We didn't wait to see if he'd get up again. We scrambled out the back door into the alley, piling back into the SUV and speeding out of Harmony Creek as fast as we could. Looking back, I saw more figures, emerging from the shops drawn by the commotion. The town hadn't been empty. It had just been waiting. As we put distance between us and the town, the adrenaline faded, replaced by bone-deep weariness. It was just past noon on the second day. We had survived the initial outbreak, survived the separation, survived the Whitaker farm and the ghost town. We had fuel, some food, and each other. But the encounter with the butcher, the close call, served as a stark reminder. Safety was an illusion. The world belonged to the dead now, and the living were just trying to find spaces to hide in the gaps. And somewhere out there, maybe following, maybe waiting ahead, was a clown with a music box and a single wilted red balloon who had marked me for reasons I couldn't begin to fathom. The separation from my family felt like a lifetime ago, replaced by the immediate, terrifying reality of keeping what was left of us alive in a world determined to swallow us whole. The fight for survival had only just begun.